Syosset.
Syosset. I knew there was one on the island somewhere.
It's way harder than it looks on TV.
It looks impossible.
Looks like
I can't imagine I would be that graceful trying to do a sliding half split down the ice. I don't know that that would be a cute look.
Nope.
It would be adorable.
Okay, it looks like we got YouTube connected, correct?
Yes, we should be live now.
Okay, good. Okay, anybody who's joining us either on Zoom or YouTube, welcome. This is a planning board work session, so you can listen in. We won't be taking any public comment tonight because it is a work session. We only take public comment at public hearings. So we have 2 items on our agenda. We'll get to those in a bit to discuss on a work session. But before we do that, we'll want to get started with I believe we have a trustee report. As soon as I look through what copies of documents I have here. Minutes from prior meetings we're going to be talking about as well. Okay, can't seem to pull the print out of the February 10th meeting. So can somebody tell me the first item on the agenda?
You mean the March 10th?
Yeah, thank you.
Oh,
I
sure.
may have been in the wrong month. March 10th, first item, we have minutes.
Is approved the February 3rd, February 10th, and March 3rd draft minutes.
Okay. Was anybody missing on the February 3rd? I thought we had.
No,
Tom Volpus was out, but Tom is no longer, has just resigned from the board in case people on Zoom heard us talking before we started. Tom Volpus has resigned. So we're actually looking for another board member. And we also lost our alternate, Joe Castellano, who also resigned. So it was a busy week in terms of resignations. So let's discuss the February 3rd minutes first. I recall last time we met, we had noted that there were some comments that Cindy had not incorporated, and I think everybody had made comments. We did get a copy
Cindy,
of the updated minutes.
Yeah, and Cindy, I liked the wording that you used. That was.
Oh, good. I'm glad you looked it over.
Yeah, it was good. I did it on my phone because I didn't bring my computer with me out here, but from what I saw, it looked great. So I'm good with those minutes.
I know I'm not a board member, but I don't believe I received the minutes.
Do you want me to forward them to you right now?
That'd be lovely. Thank you so much.
These are 3 weeks. They're February 3rd minutes that we're talking about.
Yeah, it can't seem to find anything. Oh, I see the February 3rd ones, but not the March.
Okay, do you have February 10th?
So Cindy, she wasn't on that, the thing that you sent out today. I don't see her on the email chain.
Okay, so let me send them now. February 10th and March 3rd.
Perfect, thank you.
No problem.
Okay, well, board members, I don't have any further comments since I had made mine, and I know Cindy's put them in there. Anybody else have comments on the revised minutes?
I'm good.
I'm good.
Okay. I get a motion to accept the minutes as amended.
I'll motion.
I'll second.
Okay, second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so that's the February 3rd minutes. And then we have, next up is February 10th. Virtual meeting minutes. I was good with that also, February 10th.
I didn't have any comments.
Neither did I.
Same.
Okay, I have a motion to accept the minutes of February 10th.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, Barbara, second, Gil.
Yep, please.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Okay, minutes are accepted. March 3rd minutes. I just have one comment. I think we did not have a trustee report. Is that correct? Oh, no, that's the March 3rd. The minutes say trustee report, but doesn't say anything. Did we not That was last week, right? We did not have one,
Oh.
I believe.
No,
No, we
I
did.
gave a very
We
short
did.
trustee report.
Yeah.
I reported something that I'm going to report tonight didn't happen. So perhaps someone saw into the future and
Okay.
just didn't write it down.
So
Yeah.
we're gonna need, anybody have notes on that? We're gonna need to add
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I do too.
Okay,
I have the Board of Trustee meeting of April 1st that week. Rezos on the bed and breakfast code changes. Going before the Conservation Board and the architectural guidelines. And that the March 7th Board of Trustee meeting would happen in person.
That's pretty accurate, yes.
Was it for a reso or public comment?
It was supposed to be a resolution, 2 resolutions, but because of the budget,
Oh.
the mayor did not put those resolutions on, resolutions to create a public hearing. for the
Ah,
public
okay,
hearing.
yep, that's what I remember, not a resolution approving the
No, no, no.
changes to the code.
Yeah,
Okay,
to set the public hearing date,
Right.
so. Gil, you're forcing my hand, but now my whole report is gone for tonight, and now it's gonna be blank again.
okay.
Yeah, Yeah, the only other
Cindy,
thing,
go ahead, Rebecca.
no, it was the CAC working, getting towards collaborating with the ARC on environmental additions to the village's building guideline.
Okay.
That was it.
All right. Cindy, did you get what Gil said?
Yes,
kinda
and I
went-
had all that in my notes. I think
okay.
I think I just was last week because of the stenographer and the long meeting, I was just bulleting everything. But everything you
Gotcha.
just said, I did have in my notes, so I'll add that into the minutes.
Okay.
I don't know, Cindy, you're leaving me out on emails. You're not writing down.
Ah, don't take it personally.
I will.
Now you're gonna get too many emails from me like everybody else.
Okay, can we get a motion to accept the minutes then as amended, based on the information that Gil provided and Cindy's going to incorporate?
I'll make the motion.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. So in the meantime, that gave you enough time to find my copy of the March 10th minutes, March 10th agenda, I'm sorry. So we did approve the draft meeting minutes for those 3 meetings, so they'll all get posted shortly on the website. Our next planning board meeting and public hearing is on April 7th. We had discussed possibly having, I believe, a work session prior to the meeting if we needed it. I thought that we kind of left it that we would have the public hearing, the resumption of the adjourned public hearing for Mather Hospital on April 7th and before and after that public hearing, which will be at 6:30 on April 7th. We would have a work session for whatever other items are on the agenda. Is there any insight into, is that still a viable plan, or are we looking at a long work session agenda on April 7th at this point?
I think at this point, there's some stuff that could come in to that would want to be scheduled. I think we don't need to set a separate work session yet, but perhaps we will if some of the applications that are out there where we're waiting for a response from applicants, if they come in the next 2 weeks, we might want to consider putting a different work session on for April.
Yeah, I'd say like put a pin in that for right now. The notice requirements for a work session are by no means as arduous as that of a public hearing. So if we need a little less time to pull that together, we can do that. But yeah, we have a lot of things that are in applicants' wheelhouses at the moment. They're on their plates. And as we've seen in the past, those tend to all come in at exactly the same time, right? Even though we send them out in a staggered manner. So on the not terribly off chance that we get 5 or 6 submissions all at the same time that are relatively ready to come before the board, I'd say, hey, we don't have to preset the date, but keep in your minds that we might need to set one before or perhaps just after the meeting on the 7th.
Okay. All right, Rebecca, did you want to amend anything to what you said about the trustee report tonight?
I'll just clarify that with the 2 resolutions that were scheduled to be on the agenda for this past Board of Trustees meeting had been bumped by request of the mayor to hopefully another meeting soon. And again, that was regarding short-term rentals with changes to both the rental code, which is the rental code and the bed and breakfast code. One is 250 and one is 205. So that, I'm sure when we meet next time, I will give you a update on that. Otherwise, the CAC continued its work on Tuesday for the green building guidelines, and we'll hopefully we'll be inviting the ARC members to their meeting in April to join them for comment and discussion about that. And then I had told them I'd be sending it to Allison, but we will send it to whoever Allison recommends that we send it to for comment as well.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay, why don't we move on to the first item on the agenda tonight for tonight's work session. Again, if you joined late, either on Zoom or YouTube, there is no public comment tonight because this is the work session. You're invited to stay on, listen in on the discussions and the applications. First item on the agenda is 105 Wynn Lane, that's Ruvo Restaurant. A second is a further discussion on Mather Hospital, just so everyone watching knows what we're going to be doing. Cindy, if you just want to quickly read in the particulars on 105 Wynn Lane on the agenda.
105 Wynn Lane Site Plan Amendment, application number 0621-22. Location is 105 Wynn Lane, Suffolk County Tax Map Number, Section 12, Block 7, Lot 26.1. Zoning C1 Commercial District. Applicant Joseph D. Nicola. Property owner Joseph D. Nicola. Contact Joseph D. Nicola. Description: site plan amendment to bring property into compliance and to install an awning. And the action is to introduce the application.
Okay, this is, I guess, Lisa, if you can bring the applicants into the room.
Okay. Jen, can you just confirm that's just Rick Bartlett, right?
As far as I know, it's Rick Bartlett and Joe DiNicola.
Okay.
And while we're waiting, I just want to note that the April 7th meeting will also be virtual. We have a continuation of the Mather Hospital public hearing, which we said was going to be virtual. So that makes that whole session virtual. The whole meeting virtual, I should say.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you. Good
Okay.
evening.
I know Joe DiNicola is trying to log in. There is a problem with the link. If you try to, access it through Google Chrome or I don't forget what he was trying to access it through, but it doesn't. It comes up that the page is no longer available. So I actually went back and I came in on Microsoft Edge. So I know he was having some difficulty. I don't know whether he's rectified it or not.
Okay, do you know if he's aware that he should be using Edge? And I don't know if anybody else is having that trouble at home, but
I told him that I was able to get on with Edge.
Yeah, I'm using Google Chrome and not having an issue, but of course I have a different link to enter. I can.
I'm using Mozilla Firefox, and that got me on without any problem. But I have no idea.
Actually, it looks like I'm logged in on Chrome, but that's a different link anyway, so it may not be the same. Okay, do we need to wait?
Lisa,
wait for
can we
Joe?
send him, can we just send Joe the link that,
Hey, Joe,
that
Yes,
we're
I can,
on?
I can send him a
Oh.
direct link. I just need his email
you tried
address.
Firefox? They said Firefox.
Oh, I can give that to you, Lisa.
Okay, if you just hand me that, I will
Yep.
send him a direct
Hold on.
invite.
Rick, we're going to send Joe,
Hold on one second. I'm
we're
sorry.
going to send Joe a direct link in his email. Have him look on his email. He should not have problems using that link. So rather than coming in through the website, he'll click in through the main link. Just when he's done with his part of the presentation, we just ask that he then clicks out so we can move on to the next part of the application.
Okay. They're gonna email
Thanks.
you directly. Check your email. You have Josephine@mac.com.
Oh, and let him know I'm using Safari and it's fine. So if he wanted to use Safari on his Mac.
I think he's on the road. I think he's actually trying to call him from his phone.
Oh,
All right. I will, I guess he's waiting for your email, so. All right, Joe, once you get that, you should be able to. I don't know if they'll be able to hear you well to do that.
All right, so an invite has been sent directly to his email.
She said she just sent the direct link to you. If that doesn't work, then we'll see if we can do something with speakerphone, but try that. All right. All right, so you've been trying.
Rick, do you want to start or do we need to wait for Joe totally?
Well, I guess there's several, obviously there's a laundry list of things in the staff report, some of which Joe was surprised about because some of the stuff that is shown, he was under the impression had been previously approved and or, resolved in some way, shape, or form. I guess one of the concerns was the quote unquote garage space that was converted to kitchen space. And I had sent earlier today, I sent a floor plan that was, I believe, from 1979 that was approved by the village that showed that space with a dishwasher in it and several floor drains, which would be highly unusual for parking spaces. So, there seems to be a conflict in what was approved for that space.
That would have been a later submission. In 1979, it was still very much the small space. Did not include the garages yet. And any expansion into the garage would have triggered site plan, and there was no application for that expansion into the garage.
If you look at that floor plan, it's actually.
I think there's maybe a few explanations for that. It could have happened without site plan approval and been noticed, and perhaps, I mean, it's difficult to tell. It was a long time ago. Record keeping is a little spotty, but that approval is from the building department, and it's not clear why it happened. But there is no record. There was no site plan approval for that expansion. Which would have had to have preceded getting a building permit to actually do what's indicated on the drawings.
But if that's something that Joe, I guess, inherited, and that was approved by the building department to develop that as kitchen space, well, why is he being penalized for that now?
parking, maybe? Was it
For the
the
loss,
lack of
for the
parking?
loss of the parking, yeah.
Absolutely. And any expansion of that nature required then planning board approval.
But I mean, we can just remedy that now. Like, I mean, I hate.
I
to
think
see-
this, this outlines the way to remedy it. It's done. No one's asking that it be, revert back to a garage.
Joe, you there? Joe?
You kind of see him, I think.
Oh,
Yeah, we see him.
I can see him, but I don't know if he can hear us.
oh, he's
Or...
literally driving.
Mhm.
Wow, that's a talent. That's good.
I guess he doesn't have audio.
Yeah, it said on the screen he was connecting to audio, so I don't know.
I don't know if it's like I don't know if I call him, if it's gonna cut him off.
Yeah, that's true.
Hey, Jen.
Yeah.
When they put in the deck, why didn't all this come up then?
I think it did.
Oh, okay.
The deck was approved. And I realized, I think in the staff report, I indicated that I attached the letter, and then I realized I didn't do that. But I can, it's a short agreement. It happened during COVID restrictions, when people were trying to install as much outdoor dining as possible to help restaurants. And
It's connected, but we can't hear you.
so the agreement, and I can send it. Joe DiNicola will submit a site plan and an updated floor plan on the property of 105 Wind Lane so that we can identify the improvements on village-owned property and make the proper parking calculation. So Mr. DiNicola can bring the building into full compliance. This agreement is in good faith with between the village and Joe DiNicola. The Village of Port Jefferson gives Mr. DiNicola permission to build his patio on the west side of the building. The maintenance of same will be incorporated into the land easement agreement between the parties.
Okay. Thank you. I didn't remember. I didn't remember that.
It's because I forgot to send
Hear you on the
copy of the agreement. I apologize.
And the reason the plan came in was to install the awning over the
Now.
outdoor
Right.
Dining area.
And I,
Well, yes, that's in addition. Yes, in addition to.
and I want to say how much we appreciate them coming before us to ask permission to put in an awning. It's pretty nice. So I don't want them to feel punished, and you know what I mean? Like, it's a good thing.
You hear us, Joe?
That's funny that he connects visually, but he can't hear us. We're not able to hear him.
It has something to do with the fact that he's in his car. We don't know.
Yeah, chances are the reception is very poor, and this is demanding a lot to connect to a video conference like this.
Yeah, I know he said he was out on the North Fork around.
So since the posture of tonight's meeting is simply an introduction of the project to the planning board, while certainly Joe's input would be incredibly useful and helpful at this point, we're certainly going to have additional meetings moving forward from here on out. So why don't I suggest, since we're having some connectivity issues, getting Joe fully online, why don't we move forward with the introduction and take the planning board through what's proposed, what's existing, what we're bringing into compliance, and kind of the path forward.
Okay, it sounds good.
Okay, should I?
Yep.
You want me to begin? Sure,
Sure.
Not a problem. It's a long staff report, I know, and I'm not sure if you made it all the way through. The gist of it is there have been two planning board approvals for the restaurant in the past. One in 1979, when when it was Printer's Devil, and some of you, I'm sure, remember that. And the second time began in 1987. It was an expansion into what was then called the cottage on the site. So it involved an expansion to the restaurant as well as to the kitchen. Over time, there have been, the original owners of the property have also acquired more property over time in order to accommodate their expansions. I couldn't find any records of sort of lot line adjustments, which we typically, or subdivisions, which, because we don't have a code for lot line adjustments. Nevertheless, I think that what is shown on the site plan presented is in fact does outline the property line, the boundary of the property. If you're looking, so at some point, I'm not exactly sure when it happened. There was a 2-car garage and a carport
Hey, Jen.
Yeah.
I'm
Oh,
really
should
sorry.
you know what? Let's put up
Yeah,
the plan.
can you-
Sorry.
Can
Yes.
you do that?
I'm looking
Yeah.
at the plan. I just realized and talking to you guys. My apologies.
Okay, yeah, I didn't bring my computer and I'm trying to look at it on my phone.
Yeah, that's not going to help.
Yeah.
So if perhaps we can look at the markup site plan first.
With this, I have this in email, Jen?
Yes.
Thank you.
I
Sorry
got-
to throw a wrench.
Very cool.
I'm in, guys. I'm sorry I was late. I just couldn't get on.
No problem. Hello.
Hi, can anyone hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, good.
Great
Yeah,
I am
persistence.
Joe. Pardon me?
Good job in your persistence. That was great.
Yeah, it only took a half hour, but I'm here.
Okay.
Anyway, I'm sorry, I'm on the road today and that's, unfortunately, I didn't think it was going to be this difficult. Okay,
Uh,
what did I miss?
Jen,
No, it's
Jen
just
is
an
going to walk through the staff memo, just giving a history of what's
All right, does
transpired
everyone-
so far. And she's bringing
that-
up the plan, so we can all view it on the screen.
Okay, I just could just give you a little background on me. My name's Joe DiNicola. I own Ruvo. I've been the sole owner with my brother since the inception when Printer's Devil, I bought the Printer's Devil, not from Caddison, but from the owner after Caddison, Judy and Jim. As time went on, I learned that many things were not legally done in the past. And that's kind of where we are. So I bought the building last year and I agreed with Allison that I would try to bring the building with Margot and Allison. I agreed up to code to the best that I can. Because I really haven't changed anything from what I inherited to now, except for adding a deck and a fence that was put around the dumpsters that I received the violation from the town. And the remedy of the violation was to put fencing around the dumpsters that were already in place when I inherited the business. That's it. Anyone
Okay.
hear me?
yes.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes.
All right. So
Okay.
all of these things I understand, and I've been through it with Mark, I've been through with Allison. Rick, excuse me, and through with Allison. And, like they put parking spaces in the kitchen. I don't know. And on the plans, the time they allowed the parking spaces, there were plans to have a dishwasher. I've never seen a garage that has cars parked and a dishwasher in the same spot. Just a lot of these things, the dumpsters are where the dumpsters were. I don't know. I didn't do that.
I think in the past, an easement was granted very early on with the owner of what's now the village grocer to use the dumpster on their lot. And then the site plan that was approved in 1991,
Right.
the dumpsters were moved to the rear of sort of the alley between the stores on Main Street and Ruvo. It's not clear going through the files when the garage was converted into a dishwashing and prep area, but that's how it functions today. And the carport, which is on the southernmost part of the site, has just been sort of enclosed with a rain guard and is used for kitchen storage and things like that. So there are no parking spaces that the applicant was formerly given credit for. There were 2 in the garage, 1 in the carport, and then 2 along the side of the building in the alley.
My definitive argument here is they did that. They gave them the parking spaces, from what I've read, simultaneously with a plumbing riser that they submitted to the building department. So at the time they approved the parking spaces in the garage, if you want to call it a garage per se. They also gave them permission to put a dishwasher in simultaneously. So somebody knew what was going on. I mean, I know we're going back to 1991, but somebody overlooked it or somebody let it happen, but it happened. And where they put the carport parking space, you couldn't fit a car in there if you wanted to. There's a huge gas meter in the way. So I don't know who overlooked that, but gas, I'm assuming, has been in this building for a really long time, and they don't really move gas. I know you have some engineers there. To move a gas line is a big deal.
Yeah, so Joe, I 100% can feel your frustration or pain. It is difficult when you buy a piece of property and it does have a lot of things that you have to remedy. But greatly appreciate that you've come before the board. And what I think we should do, and it's just me, is hear out what the staff has come up with, Jen has come up with in order to remedy it. And then, it's a discussion, whatever we can do in terms of code and, things.
Okay.
I think,
So
it's
just so you know, from my perspective, okay, the first time I learned about this was because we had a major storm and a roof limb penetrated the roof of my building and broke the skylight. And when I was doing the repair, the town showed up, demanded that I get a permit to put a new roof on. Why, I have no idea. I've never heard of anything like. I've been building for a really long time, but to replace a roof, you don't need a permit, as far as I'm concerned. And I think, anybody would agree with you with that, but they decided they wanted me to have one. And then when I applied to get the permit, I made my architect jump through hoops to get a permit within 24 hours. Then it was rejected because there were other violations on the building that I had no idea about. So I don't know what, I was told by Allison and Margot that, sorry, that, they'll work with me with the parking, draw out the site plan. They allowed me, after the second flood that I had, to rebuild, a deck outside and with coat and everything. But these things have been allowed already. So I don't understand how we can go in reverse. Like, you already allowed for these parking spaces to be in the garage, knowing that there was a plumbing riser showing floor drains, a dishwasher in the same location. and you allowed for the parking spot in the breezeway, knowing that a car couldn't possibly, maybe a Volkswagen, or one of those IT cars could fit in there, but a normal sized car would not fit in this space. So these decisions have already been made, and now I'm going to feel the repercussions of all these. And then Rick was explaining to me that there's also going to be a large demand for parking for the attic space. That was an office when I inherited. I've had 1 million building inspectors through this building, upstairs, downstairs. Why hasn't it been brought up before?
Joe, if I could, this is Gil Anderson.
Okay.
I would echo what Laura said earlier. We as a board have been running into issues with this and the history of the village and things that have occurred and been kind of approved, but people just do what they want. And we do appreciate you coming in here to try and rectify this. I would say if you could, give us a chance to.
Okay. I just want to give you some history. That's all I wanted to do. Give you some.
No,
history.
and I get that, and I'm not here to argue with you. I just
okay. No, I agree. I just want you to know though, everything I got, except for I made 2 changes. Okay, well 3 if you want to call it, and I'm happy to tell you what they are. I put the deck on with permission from the mayor. Okay, I enclosed the dumpsters in the current location where they are with to rectify a violation that I was issued, a summons that I was issued from the village. They required me to do that. Believe me, I didn't want to go out and spend the $6,000 10 years ago to put a proper gate system up, but the village asked for it. So I did it. And the only other thing I'm guilty of is cleaning the area up where the cars were already parking, like putting gravel down and trying to make it as aesthetically pleasing as possible. That's it. Anything else it's been there. And I wasn't the owner of the building, so it wasn't spelled out to me in my lease. I didn't really know that these things were illegal. I didn't know that they built the office upstairs and then the storage. I didn't know that was illegal. They put a stairwell in. Somebody had to approve the stairwell because it goes right to where a parking spot is. It's in the way of the parking spot. Somebody approved it.
Yeah. I don't really know if this is the time and the place to argue about what they knew, what was approved, what was just done. I think, again, let Jen go through her presentation. You have a board that wants to work with you, and by work,
and I want to comply.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Right, but we just have to do our due diligence as well. So let's see what Jen has to say.
I'm in complete understanding. I'm all ears. Go ahead. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Joe, just to for anybody watching, we're talking about 1991. Now you opened the restaurant. I think it was in 2006. Is that correct?
Right. I bought the business in 2005. I opened in 2006, and I purchased the building in 21.
Okay. So as the other board members have said, we're just trying to sort through this and trying to
absolutely.
Everybody wants to bring it into compliance. And so we're tracing through history here to see what was done at what time and trying to, resolve these things. So Jen will go through her report so that everybody gets a sense of what the issues are.
Just with that said, I'll add one more thing and then I'll really be quiet. I've been down to the building department many, many times to try to see what was going on. I think Allison LaPointe can testify to the fact that a lot of the files weren't in great order. Only a short period of time, maybe a decade to I know that she spent a tremendous amount of time trying to rectify that. But there were overlapping things, like some of my plans are in the building for Paces across the street. I had to fill out all sorts of Freedom of Information Act. But my point to what I'm trying to say is the records aren't great. They really aren't. And I can say that with, as an eyewitness and filling out the foils to look at the records probably upwards of 10 times over the years.
Okay, we'll have Jen go through her report so we can see what the issues are.
Thank you.
Okay.
So it's true. The files in this department aren't always in great order. And it did take a while to sift through this. And sort of this report and a memo that I wrote to the file some time ago outlined a timeline that I could piece together given what's contained in the property file. As I said earlier, this property has had 2 site plan approvals. And I don't know if at this point it matters. I think at this point to propose public parking or employee parking in the carport and that garage at the end of the alleyway would not have even been entertained by this board. But that being said, I do believe that before there was planning staff and a real planning department here, efforts were made by the boards in the past to try and make something work for an applicant. We run into this sort of thing all of the time. And sort of the best laid plans didn't really turn out to be so. Just sort of created, the problems that you're facing now down the line. So I've itemized the additions that were done to the building after the last site plan. That is turning the 2-car garage into kitchen space, as well as the carport, and moving the dumpster to where it presently is. And unfortunately, that's village land. And without a proper easement agreement ever being finalized. It may have been discussed extensively, and I know that the brick paver, the driveway, in that area from the parking lot to the carport on the west side of the property was discussed, was on the site plan, but an easement to actually use that for loading and bringing things into the restaurant was never obtained, unless it exists in your files, Mr. DiNicola, but it does not exist in village files.
Well, I don't have that either, and I look for it, but
right.
It's the village. But can I just say I got to comment on sometimes. Sure. So when you're talking about it wasn't approved, it's my understanding that all the brick in the entire village is owned by the village. And I've been told that by several people. So the village either gave permission or put the brick in themselves for that easement to go into the back of the restaurant.
It's entirely possible. I'm just saying there's no record of that. It is shown on the plans. There's no record. However, the dumpster and the enclosure that has the 2 dumpsters and the HVAC equipment and a few other things, that has never been presented on any plan, nor, as far as I know, seen or approved by the Board of Trustees as it is their property. So
I would agree with that, but
okay,
again, somebody else put them there. I put the HVAC there after the last flood when it killed my AC. So floodwaters.
I don't think that this presentation is really to determine guilt or who did what. I think that it's just to look at the path forward, like how. So you presently have expanded onto your restaurant currently operates on village land. The glide path forward to pulling a property into compliance is to present the areas that where you encroach on village land. That includes the entrance to your restaurant. I mean, they're sort of shaded in yellow. And seek a land easement, as it sounds like you and Margot have agreed to do, in an easement agreement. I think in the staff report, I propose that those boundaries be defined. Well, there's sort of an ill-defined boundary to the south, where you've got a gravel area on the south side of the brick pavers, and there's a shed there. How that gets more rigorously defined, I don't know.
The shed is a movable object. It could be disposed of also.
That's fine. So these are, so
Yeah.
you have a number of, and I've tried to itemize the considerations and issues that will be between you as the property owner and the Board of Trustees. There is
Okay.
obviously
Can I
no
ask
other.
a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you make a recommendation to the Board of Trustees?
Yes.
Like
the
if you
board-
were to come to me right now and say, okay, Joe, in order for this to be right, I want you to do X, Y, and Z to this area that you're already occupying. And that would make that would make you guys, the planning department, happy. And we would recommend that and then I don't know how I would go about, I would
You'd
guess I'd
find
get the approval first from the board.
Right, you'd
the
find
board,
a
and then-
surveyor to actually delineate
Yeah,
the
I
area,
have-
but can I just let me answer
Go
the
ahead.
first part of your question? I think in the staff report, I do think that that you've done a really admirable job of taking care of the tree, which I love in that location.
Me too. It's
The
one of my favorite.
landscaping, yes, and the restaurant is always a very welcoming looking place, and people using the parking lot for, other things, to go to Rocket Ship Park, they see a very nice establishment. So I think the staff will be the planning board's recommendation. In my staff report, it looks to me as if the land between the brick sidewalk and your establishment might form the boundary line of your land easement. That's the property you're currently taking care of and using. And I think you're doing a great job. I very much appreciate the fence you put around the dumpster area. We often don't get applicants who are eager to put up something that just isn't a generic chain link enclosure. I think it works well.
Well, the village asked me to do, it's in my best interest, and in my opinion, it's in the village best interest to make things look as nice as possible.
I completely agree. You're not, that's not always the opinion of everyone.
But everyone has to realize at this meeting, I only own the building for a year now. So where I was dumping money into my landlord's pockets over and over, after the last flood, I said, okay, I'm leaving because I can't either sell me the building or I got to go, because I didn't have any insurance the first time around. Then it cost me over $200,000. And the second time around, I have insurance, but I still haven't received any money. You know how that goes. So I'm like 400 deep just on the two floods, because I had to pay all my employees and do all that, but irregardless, that's not your problem. My opinion is try to make things as nice as possible. When I asked the village to prune the tree, I just want you to know, they told me they wouldn't prune it. They were just going to cut it down. So I took over pruning the tree every year.
Well, thank you.
Okay. And then when I asked them to cut the grass, because it is village property, they refused also. So I've been maintaining the property, the gardens, which is on village property, for the last 15 years.
Right.
I just want that to be clear.
Right. But also using it for your own.
Yeah, but I also maintain it,
Absolutely.
I wasn't using, up until the pandemic, I wasn't using it. I was just keeping it
Well, you're
free.
using it you need dumpsters and you need HVAC equipment, and that too is.
That's true. I'm talking about the garden side and the
Right.
grass and
Right.
that stuff.
Right.
Yes,
And I think you've
I agree
done
with that.
a great job.
Thank you.
So where were we?
About the easement,
Right. So this is and some of the considerations that
Mhm.
the board in terms of making recommendations to the Board of Trustees later on, there are questions, I think they're itemized, what page is that? I should have numbered the pages. Currently, I
Lost you.
I think we may have lost your mic, Jen.
Yep.
She's working on fixing it.
hear me.
Now
Yes.
we can.
Oh, good. I don't know why it keeps doing that. You're currently parking on both sides of that brick access way to the carport. It will be up. They're not code compliant parking spaces. I realize that it's
I agree.
employees.
Yep.
And this is, a planning board and a board of trustee determination. I think you have, there's no curb cut. The curb cut's not quite wide enough.
And what if I rectified all of that?
Well, I mean, this is just to introduce the application and to think about, whether or not the Board of Trustees will ultimately determine whether or not they want to permit parking in that area.
I don't have to think about it. I don't like anything dirty, Again, I just bought the building, so I was maybe reluctant to pave anything at that point or brick anything. But
Well, don't
now
do
that I own the
anything
building,
yet.
I know. I'm just saying, now that I own the building, I'm not opposed to beautifying that area and making it, as
Okay.
you say, with a proper egress and doing the right thing there. I'm not opposed to that at all.
Great. So that's one item. And I think that's probably sort of the main thing that will need to be resolved in that area. It's clear that there is no other place to put these things, and it's been very nicely, and I think I put this in the staff report as well. It has been well maintained over the years. The area always looks neat, and you don't see garbage. It's in a very public, visible place, and
I know everyone pulls in.
nice.
It's the first thing they see.
Mhm.
I really try. It's hard. It's hard to get people to close the gate. I swear to God.
And
It's
as
hard.
long as you're requesting permission to use this sort of area of village land, it's a modest size deck.
Yep.
It's nicely constructed. It's your only real option for outdoor dining. Again, this is a planning board decision. I'm just sort of rattling off the things that they'll
As
want
being
to
part of the
consider.
planning board, I hope you can appreciate that. I tried to, when I build, I come from an art background. My father was an artist. My brother's a designer. I design all my own restaurants, but I try to keep things within the look of the village, the look of the building, and you as being planning experts, I hope you appreciate. I tried to make something that looks like it's been there forever,
Yeah.
So
we do appreciate that, Joe. I think maybe if Jen can get through the memo, and then you can have
ahead.
questions.
All right, I'll
comments
keep my
at
mouth
the
shut.
end.
So this
That might be better.
this sort of back before the planning board ultimately can make any kind of decision, there will be discussions between you and the Board of Trustees as well, because in order to, like I said, define the boundaries of the easement, that will have to be shown on a survey by a licensed surveyor. There'll be a document that describes the meets and bounds and the uses. So I think that's an important thing to get going, because they're just time-consuming processes often. In terms of the drawing that was submitted, that rectangle that's in the middle of the restaurant, I believe that's the 12-foot easement that's described. I believe it belongs behind lot 24 5.8. That easement was created many years ago to allow rear access to the property. It's actually one building, but it's got 2 lot numbers to the west.
Right.
So if you, I think providing a copy to the board of that easement and placing it correctly, I think it begins at the rear of the building on lot 25.8, but I'm not sure, but it definitely doesn't belong in the middle of the restaurant.
Excuse me, Rick, are you following this?
Back at the survey.
Rick, are you following this? When we did a title search, this came up.
Trying to look back at the survey to see if what that shows, the survey that you sent me. It actually shows that being demarked in the middle. It's the survey that was done by T. Eason Land Surveyor in 2018.
Right. That can't be the location of the easement. And I have a description of the easement from Mr. Catterson, who was a former owner of the property. So I can send that to you, and it just may require a little more research.
Yeah, he shows it as a 12-foot ingress and egress easement.
Right. Yeah, but it should be moved to the east.
Okay.
Okay. Another change that took place without site plan approval was the approved site plan in 1991 showed the attic space as just an attic. It was not meant to be used as active storage for the restaurant use, and therefore it was excluded from any additional parking requirement. That has since been converted to an office. There's a dumbwaiter. I think there's linen storage, alcohol storage. So it is now, I think, in its totality, active restaurant storage and use, which is fine. But there is a parking requirement that when a restaurant expands, there's a parking, additional parking is required.
Is there different calculations for occupiable space and storage?
There is not. It's 1 per 100 square feet regardless.
Okay.
Great.
And again, Joe, all we're doing is making a recommendation to the Board of Trustees based on code.
I know, I'm just
calculations.
laughing though. You know,
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I'm laughing.
However,
Because like,
can I just,
I'm gonna go look at the date on the elevator when I get over there next time, and I guarantee it's like, you know, the thing was built in the 80s. It's so old, this elevator. Oh my God. It's funny. I
So,
can only find one person to service it. That's how old it is.
yeah, again, Joe, what we're doing is bringing you into compliance, making a recommendation to the Board of Trustees, and it's their purview on
Mhm.
what you do to get those
Okay.
spaces, right? And it
All
sounds
right,
like.
I'm fully aware. I understand what you have to do.
Okay.
Okay.
We're
I
not.
just find it
punishing you in any way,
humorous.
you
I
know?
know, but you got to think it's kind of humorous though. I mean, like they put the parking spaces in the kitchen, they put a stairwell in the kitchen, they put a dumbwaiter in, but nobody knew. Come on.
I think people,
I mean, come on.
some people did know. Often there wasn't a lot of communication between
Right,
when there
between the
was
two.
no planning staff here. A
Right.
building inspector may say, wow, when did this go in? We better inspect it. And frequently didn't check to see, does it comply with the site plan?
I mean, if I may, I know that I've heard these arguments or these issues before raised since my time with the planning board. I'd like to be able to get it resolved and just move on. I mean, you know, and I think that's where we all are, is okay, we want to get you, so you're good, you can do your thing. And, you know, we've all spent a lot of money and enjoyed your restaurant, and we want to continue. So
Thank you.
Exactly.
And I want to continue in business, but you also, I hope you take into consideration, I've gotten, can I, without using too much harsh, I've gotten the crap beat out of me over the last few years. And
Between-
between the floods, which
Mhm.
never happened prior to all the building, it's like we don't have any wetlands any longer to accept water, so it just runs to my restaurant. And, you know, in COVID, it's been very, very difficult. So,
Yeah, we do understand that, sir.
okay, thank you.
Okay. Those are the primary issues. There are items that the planning board requires on all site plan submissions. And I think I've asked in the site plan comments, the floor plans need overall dimensions and some interior dimensions, please. And just, I mean, the more accurate records we have, the less we avoid situations like this in the future. And if these are here for posterity, when all of us are no longer in the planning department, things can proceed a lot more smoothly. On the site plan, I think I've listed, do you have an interior or exterior grease trap?
Interior.
Oh.
Okay, it's regularly inspected?
Yeah,
Okay.
you know, the Department of Health is all over that lately. So just so you know, which is fine because we clean it every week. I
Okay.
have two to be precise. I have two grease traps.
Okay.
I have a small one underneath a prep sink in the front part of the kitchen, and then I have the large one that deals with the floor drains and the dishwasher and the pot sink in the back of the kitchen.
Okay.
And they
Well,
both have been replaced within 15 years because I replaced them both since I've you know, took over ownership.
Okay. So, and this may be more for Rick. I've made a list. And if the planning board sees anything I've omitted, please let me know. But to have an accurate code compliant site plan, I've listed the additional items that we need to see indicated on the site plan. Those include the grease trap, where the utility lines are. I know that you have gas meters in the carport
South,
area.
yep, the south
Right.
side, correct.
Right, but just so, and this is required, you know, for everyone. You know, any existing lighting, no one, it's more informational. And I'm not requiring you to put anything in, just show me where things are, or show the board where they all are. So a little more detail on the site plan. I'd like to see a copy of the filed easement and that correctly delineated on the site plan. You will need the property to be, will need a current survey done by a licensed surveyor. I would hold off on scheduling that until you know what your land use agreement easement will be with the village. And so in calculate and
You mentioned to
depending-
locate the existing drainage, Jen. Joe informed me that there is no drainage on site.
there
There's
is no
none.
on-site drainage.
Right.
No. No.
Okay.
There's no dry wells on the property anywhere. The property is basically a postage stamp.
It
I mean,
is.
the only property, you know, the only property that there is excess of the building is on the driveway off of Win Lane.
Right,
outside
and
of
I
that,
noticed that
it's-
you
it's-
do have a roof leader that comes down there, which could be directed into a dry well if, you know, groundwater isn't, the groundwater level isn't too high.
The problem that I would just point out is we've within the last 5 years, 6 years, developed a sinkhole on the fire department side at the end of that driveway where the dumpsters are. And from what I gathered, from talking to the guys in town, is there was some sort of water main break up front in the sewage area. And now the water must run directly under. Because if like Lenny next door had major water issues in his basement that he never had before. And he has a basement. It's a crawl basement, but he had a basement. I'm on a slab. So it created a sinkhole at the end of the driveway that's in question, with the egress, but not for the dumpster. So
Oh, your loading
I don't
zone,
know.
the brick. So
Yeah,
where,
I
I'm
really
sorry, I
don't know that
wasn't,
it's a good idea. The water
didn't-
seems to be running from Main Street, underneath the building, the salt shack, through my building, below it, and then creating a sinkhole on the back area, where the fire department driveway is, that driveway on my, to the dumpsters. So the moral of the story is, I don't know if it's a good idea to be digging anything.
Well-
right. Oh, I think I was referring to the space between the, off of Wynn Lane, for lack of a better word.
And
just
what I'm
call it the
referring
alley.
to is there's an active water stream running under there right now.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I misunderstood what you
And
were
I know
saying.
that because the gentleman who owns the building next to me is having water issues that he never had before in his basement. And then we have a sinkhole on the fire department side. So the water's running under the ground right there already.
So you think it's
I don't know
running
that-
underneath your building?
I do.
But Jen,
Yes.
the drainage that he has to contain on his property would be from his roof.
Mm-hmm.
Could a bioswale or something count?
There's not a lot of room.
Right, that's,
I'm
I
thinking,
think, if I may, I think the issue you're gonna be up against is both underground and above ground. There's no real room on land existing right now unless you go onto village property to create some kind of bioswale. But
well,
that underneath the village, throughout the village, you have, I don't want to say underground streams, but I know from experience across Main Street, the Presbyterian Church, if you go down into their basement, they're continually flooded, and you can actually, when they're not, you can actually hear the water
Really?
running. Yeah, it's
Well, they really
they-
are underground streams there.
yeah.
can
Yeah.
they,
So the
can
whole,
they, can
the
they
whole
ask
area.
for another easement, like a little tiny piece in their easement agreement in order to contain their runoff so that this doesn't just become a huge issue? Because we
Yeah, but
really
on the
need them
ori-
to
on the-
contain the runoff.
I know, but okay, so so now we're going to rewrite history, because on the original plans that I have, there's gutters. So at the time when they put the gutters on the building, it was fine, but now it's not. Like, I mean,
Again, we're
Yeah.
trying to bring everything into
isn't it?
compliance.
I understand that, but it was compliant when they built them because they got a building permit for it. So obviously it was compliant at that time because it had gutters with leaders that drained to where they're draining currently.
I actually
So-
I think one of the very early site plans showed it going out to a catch basin in Wynn Lane.
Yeah, that, back in the day, that was common practice.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean,
if that needs to be done, that's a different story. But to ask me now to be putting dry wells in to something that was already approved.
Well, put it this way, we've even had private individuals with their homes, they have to put some dry wells in that never existed before because it's
Yeah, but that usually
code, you
usually
have to contain you have to
But
contain your runoff.
Laura, I'm not,
I
not
agree with
I'm-
you.
if I may, Laura, I'm not arguing with you. I think
Yeah,
the more permeable ground you can have on the surrounding property may be the best means of getting rid of the stormwater. It would be interesting to see how far down you go below grade and start hitting groundwater, because that whole area was that was a swamp.
Drown
And
Meadow.
she-
It's
Yeah,
called Drown Meadow.
right, exactly. And
So-
it extended up to the
And it-
Catholic Church.
Gil, we had an,
With all due respect also, I gotta say something. Normally, unless I'm applying to change what's the structural part of the building, like when I bought my house in Southold, I put an add-on, they made me change the entire cesspool system and the dry well system. I get it, because I was adding on, I was expanding. I'm not changing the footprint of this building in any way. I'm not
Well,
adding
in a
more
way-
roof
Joe, in
line.
a way you are. You've gotten permission to build a deck, and now you're coming back. We are, like I said, we are trying to work with you. We've got to work through this process of issues that.
But how am
we-
I increasing the roof line? I'm not following.
You're, by the fact that you've added on a deck, which has increased the size of the restaurant, there is that argument to be made that you are, you need to, and that's what we're trying to do here, bring everything into compliance, and it has to be discussed. We're not looking to
Okay,
beat you up.
I know, but the dry wells to me is something that is completely unreasonable.
Well, and
There's
what
no
we're,
way to put a dry well.
and that's what
built
we're
on a swamp.
discussing. So what we need
Okay.
is drainage calculations and a remedy that suits the site.
if
Right.
Okay, but are you gonna deal with the fact also then? Is the village gonna take on the responsibility if my restaurant floods again? Because nobody ever brings that up. And the hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars that it's cost me. So the village doesn't have to, you want to talk about a real problem. The real problem is my restaurant has become the drainage for the village with all the expansion that's gone on. So if I'm complying, is the village going to comply? Are we going to make that recommendation also, that they have to change their groundwater septic system to, obviously now it's happened twice in 4 years, less than 4 years. October will be 4 years. So there's obviously a new issue. Is the village going to comply to rectifying that issue?
I think what Laura's saying, Joe, is if your architect could take a look at this and come up with a calculation, look at options, if there are any, and make that part of, what we're looking to do here. There may not be any. I'm not arguing for or against, but I think it does have to be discussed so that in the future, we're going to put all this to bed under this application, and then we can all move on.
Gil, may I
No,
ask
but
you-
I think Gil summed that up. I think we can move on from this now.
I just have a
maybe
quick
there is-
question.
Maybe there isn't a solution, but we're trying to take care of something. You take care of some of the site water that's coming off the building. So maybe there isn't a viable solution, but we can certainly take a look at it.
Jen, you had a question?
A quick question, and I think the board will recall drainage came up when the tax building came in for site plan approval recently. And they too had no place to put it, but what was looked at was putting down a gravel area, permeable area, pervious area, to get as much as possible. And I'm wondering if something like that could happen in the alley. Right now it's asphalt with no drainage. If some of the subsurface was taken out and something more, gravel, this is not my bailiwick, but replaced with gravel and a sub base that was much more permeable, would that help?
Wouldn't hurt.
And I'm trying to explain, there's nowhere for the water to go. We're sitting on water. There's nowhere for water to go. It's like,
But the water
there's
that,
a reason. Okay,
Okay.
listen, we have to use common sense here. There's a reason my restaurant floods and nowhere else floods. Okay? It's because the ground is impermeable and it rejects the water and it has to collect somewhere. There is nowhere for the water to go. The place was allowed to be built on a site called Drowned Meadow. That's what the restaurant was allowed to build on 50 years ago. I didn't make that decision. Nobody here made that decision, but that's the decision that's been made. And the village has been collecting taxes on that decision for a long, 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 long time.
Okay,
All right, let's move on.
let's move on.
Okay,
Uh,
there's nowhere for this water to go.
Okay. So the last issue is the additional parking that's required following these expansions and that weren't considered by the planning board. And my total that does not include whether or not you'll be allowed to provide parking on the village land. I've calculated that 10 spaces are attributed to the attic, which is now restaurant use. The three, let's see, now I'm just having a hard time. Right. There were 5 spaces. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm just having a brain fart here. And I'm on YouTube.
I don't have the memo.
I just closed it, but shoot.
On the second to last page.
Wait. Yes. Okay. Right. Sorry. I'm back on. 5 spaces for the expansion into, so 10 spaces for the attic expansion, 5 spaces for the expansion into the garage. I'm not including the carport, and 3 spaces for the spaces that were lost as a result of that action, and spaces that probably should never have been approved in the first
Can
place.
we go over that again, please?
The one,
I'm sorry.
yeah, absolutely. So by my calculation.
So you said 10 spaces for the attic.
That's, yes. So we're using the calculation 1 space per 100 square feet. The attic is a little over 900 square feet. That is restaurant space that require 10 spaces. 5 spaces are for the area that was expanded into, that includes the prep area that was the former 2-car garage, and 3 spaces for the spaces lost within that garage, the 2 spaces lost within that garage and carport. 1 space which was.
But just quick review, but we have no record on whether or not the 2 spaces were already in the calculation inside the building.
They were,
Correct?
you were given in the 1991 planning board approval. They approved, they gave the applicant at the time credit for the cottage parking spaces. And they also allowed the applicant to provide 2 spaces, whether they were public or private, I don't know, within the garage, 1 space within the carport. By everyone's admission, not a very usable space. Nevertheless, it was there. And then 2 spaces along the west side of the building. The space on the northwest corner of the building is still a viable space, probably, and I think it's used for either you, Joe, the owner, or whoever's, I think it's an employee or owner parking space. That's.
You mean the northeast corner?
Did I, what, oh, yes, I'm sorry, Gil, yes.
That's okay.
Right.
No, I just wanted to clarify.
Yes, that big X, that, yes, thank you, Lisa.
All right.
So.
Okay.
Should the Board of Trustees grant you parking on their land in the area of the dumpster enclosure, that total would be decreased accordingly. But right now, that is the parking calculation. The code right now requires a payment of $500 per parking space that cannot be physically provided.
We can theoretically still count the space in the carport.
You can still.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I didn't understand what you asked.
saying we're losing the space in the carport. Theoretically, we could still claim that space. building.
No,
Why not?
that space cannot be claimed as a parking space.
Why? It was already approved.
Well, it's not being used as a parking space, and it is
Well,
unusable
we could make,
as a parking space.
Never usable though, but it was approved. Theoretically, we're arguing over $500, but it doesn't seem right that that's, it was approved before. You were saying
Not-
things weren't approved by the
Right.
planning board.
It has
You
not
can't use it.
been used as a parking space and really cannot be used as a parking space. So it too is lost.
And
I gotta
again,
go
we're
measure it and
not,
I'll let you know.
we're not
If
the
it
ones,
has if it has a
not-
9-foot clearance, it can be used, right? Right, planning board?
Say,
It would
say-
need to have a
I'm-
9-foot clearance.
I'm sorry,
That's a parking space, right? 9 by 19?
you have gas meters there, you've got lots of equipment. I'm not sure where you're going to then relocate everything.
I don't know that the gas meters are blocking the 9 by 19. I gotta measure it. That's all I'm saying. It probably
I
is.
do
but
not think the
I'm not
board
there.
will approve this as a viable parking space. You're using it as a loading zone. If a car is parked there, you're using that area to bring in supplies to the restaurant. You
We have
cannot
other
be
entrances.
both. You don't have
There's
an
other entrances.
on-site loading zone, which you are supposed to have.
and again, all we're doing is recommending to the Board of Trustees what parking is lacking, and it's their purview to,
No, it's yours.
oh, I thought it was their purview whether to collect
So
or
you
not.
determine the parking. They are determining the boundaries and uses of the restaurant use on the village property.
Don't they also determine whether a waiver?
They do.
Right.
you
That's
park-
what I'm
Oh,
saying.
that's what I'm
I
thinking.
see. Yes. It's
That's
the
what I'm saying.
board determines what is a parking space on the site. And then the Board of Trustee, right, levies the fee or waives the fee.
Right.
And Rick, we welcome site plan. If you have some amendments to the site plan and you want to show how it's a viable parking space, go for it when you do all the rest of the site plan changes that are required. And we can address it at that point. But again, all we're doing is bringing you up to code, making everything compliant. And ultimately, the money exchanged is up to the Board of Trustees.
Correct.
I understand that. I just think it's, to say other things that were present on site weren't approved by the site plan. And then to have a site plan that approved the parking space in that carport. And nothing's been done to really change it. Because they even provided access to that space through
And
the alleyway in the back, which I don't even know how you're gonna be able to get into that space. And that's probably why it's never been used as a parking
And that's-
space, but now
And I
that
think
they
that's
Exactly
Jen's
what we're
argument.
saying.
Yeah, that's Jen's argument right there.
was approved previously, so now to take it away and tell my client that he's gotta reconcile for that.
Well, and again, that could be a great argument for the Board of Trustees as to why you should be given relief for how X number of parking spaces. So that the discussion you're having right now is something you need to have with the Board of Trustees when you guys come up with a
I think
number.
it's an argument for a waiver. I don't
Right.
believe that that's a viable parking space and should not
Exactly.
be shown as a parking space on
Exactly,
the code
Exactly.
compliant site plan.
exactly. Yes,
On the surface, I'll agree, but we have to do measurements in order to prove that. So,
Okay.
sure. Absolutely.
Everybody needs to do their due diligence without question.
yeah, like if it's 10 by 20 and there's plenty of room there, that's a parking space.
Right.
I mean, so, if there's clearance and it's 10 by 20, you can't say it's not. There's other access to load and unload there's another door on the other side of the building. On the wind lane side, that accesses the kitchen. Okay, is there anything else?
I don't think so. I mean, that's it. This was to introduce the application, bring the board up to speed.
All right. So what's going to happen? Are you going to write recommendations to us?
Well,
Well-
we need the improvements to the survey and some of the other things that Jen mentioned.
Yeah, so Rick, do you have that staff report that Jen?
I do.
Yeah.
Can you work with Jen to do all of the recommendations that she has in there, and then we can look at the final result at our next meeting?
Yeah, that's not a problem.
Okay.
And in
that's
the
good.
meantime, you guys can work on that easement, right?
All right. Do we stay on the top of the list now that we've been heard? Because the last time it took 6 months to be seen.
Once the application is, yes, you get information back to us, we
Yep.
put you on the calendar.
As long as it's
Okay,
in enough
great.
time, as long as it's received in enough time before the meeting, it can't come in the day before.
Right.
Because then
We
we
No,
don't
I
require-
understand that.
look at
We
it.
require at least 2 weeks for a
Okay.
resubmission to review.
So if we
Okay.
wanted to be on the calendar for next time, we would have to have it in within 2 weeks from today, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
And in the meantime, I think a discussion with the mayor, the board of trustees, with yourself, your staff, about what land you want included in the land use agreement. And how that,
To your knowledge, they
defined.
do that as a formal request and it's done in front of a board meeting? Or is it done, with the
eventually it
board?
absolutely is done more formally, but
No, I know that, but I mean, how do you get the ball rolling?
it's a good question. I
Call
can't give
call
you
Barbara?
exact- I think
Yeah, I
that's
would suggest
a great
call
place
over
to
to
start.
Barbara.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Barbara
I would-
Package, yeah.
Yeah, all right. So we call Barbara and ask for a meeting with some of the with the trustees and lay out our case and see how it goes.
Yes.
The
Okay.
initial, sorry, Joe,
Okay.
Allison popping in here. I'd suggest the initial
Okay.
meeting would just be with, hi, Joe, how are you? Would
Good,
be with
Allison,
Margot. My staff will reach out to Barbara and forward this memo. I believe Margot already has this memo, but we'll make sure we forward also this marked up
Yes.
map. So that way you have something to talk over. Staff can even be available to attend that meeting if you'd like. So that way, what the planning staff is talking about and what you're looking to do can be well conveyed. And then Margot will kind of direct the ship from there for next steps for getting the easement drafted. Eventually, it does have to go to the full board for a vote, but I'd say for the very beginning to just determine what areas we're talking about, we start with a smaller circle and then work our way out.
Sounds good. Okay,
All right.
Well, thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
thanks for your time, everyone. Thank you.
Yes, and Joe, thank you for your willingness to bring all this into compliance.
Yeah, I don't want my kids to have to deal with this problem. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, it's like I try to do everything above board, as best as possible. And
Well, it's
I inherited
greatly-
these problems.
Greatly appreciated, very much.
All right. So hopefully we can, everyone be reasonable and I'm willing to spend some money, but everyone has to realize I've just been clobbered. So, all right.
All
And,
right.
I'm
Thank you.
keeping a lot of people employed down there.
And
Thank
Fred.
you.
Let's move on.
Yep, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All
Have a
right,
good night,
I'll give
everybody.
you a call in a minute, all right?
Good night, everybody.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, next item is, we want to have Joe exit the meeting. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, he's-
And next item is Mather Hospital continuation of discussion of the site plan amendment.
Lisa, do you see anyone?
I do see Anthony Rodino is in the waiting room.
I don't know that he wants
Yes.
to be brought in as a panelist.
No, I believe Mr. Guardino indicated that he was going to just be listening in. When I spoke with him earlier today, he was at first surprised that they were on the calendar because he thought he was a little alarmed because they weren't able to get all the responses from just last weekend already. I assured him that the planning board did not expect to have full responses from our very lengthy hearing in 1 week's time, but rather that this was a continuation for the planning board to continue to get their head wrapped around the project, to continue to go over any outstanding issues. So that way we don't, since we have the availability of the meeting, there's no reason we can't keep working on it while we wait for that time to the next open public hearing. So I believe Anthony is listening in. He's well aware that this is a work session, and I believe even in Jen's conversations with their engineering team, they're not going to be on. So yeah, then honestly, the only other person I see in the waiting room, Jen, is once again, Clint is listening in.
No.
And we have one other person. And we have one other individual
turn that
in the
off.
waiting room. So that's the grand total of attendees sitting in the waiting room. That doesn't mean we have more friends and neighbors hanging out on YouTube listening in, but they're aware that this is a continuing to work hard on the very complicated project before.
Okay, and I do want to remind everyone I'm gonna have to leave the meeting at 8 o'clock your time.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. We'll be quick.
All right, Jen, maybe you want to bring up your staff memo and we can walk through that.
Lisa, would you do the honors?
She's the magic woman.
Yes.
Gee,
just
we'd be
give me
lost
a
without
minute.
her.
Gotta go switch gears here and find Mather.
It makes me feel like such a Luddite.
Oh, new technology is just, you think you get it and then they change it.
Yeah.
Do we, can we maybe start with Gil and drainage? His drainage
Sure.
comments, is that okay? Because
Sure.
Yeah. I want to thank you for those. And I
Yes.
still have questions.
yes.
What?
I don't know. Something's just not sinking in. I don't know.
Yes.
Do you want me to just give a quick overview, or do you want to?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So taking a look at it, I looked at the plans a couple times, hopefully in somewhat more detail than it sounds. Some comments were particular to certain things. As you note, I don't really like leaching pools in paved areas. There tends to be settlement around it. I asked for an increased compaction rate in some of the details that are on the plans to account for settlement and try to minimize it. If it was me, I'd move the leaching pools to a different area away from the entrance. There is at the northwest corner of the addition, the emergency department, where there's a ridge line, and between that ridge line and the first floor of the emergency department, it appears to be a very minimal freeboard. So if something happened, if leaves caused the drains to be backed up, there is that possibility, or the leaching pools weren't maintained and they filled up in a big rainstorm. There is the potential where there could be some kind of flooding into the building. My suggestion was to drop the ridge line a little bit in elevation to allow overflow down towards the east side of the building and further towards the southeast corner of the site. I put a little sketch together, hopefully, with my great drafting skills, and they understand it. The bigger question I think I was looking at addressing was with regard to the recharge basin. R&M's or R&S's engineering report identified catch basins along both North Country Road and Belterre Road that were connected into the recharge basin. We can argue 9 inches, we can argue 5 inches. I think the code specifically looks for right now, currently 3 inches. And Jen is absolutely right. I didn't get to read her comments, but municipalities are looking to increase the storage capacity.
Most have.
Yeah, and we haven't. But I think in fairness to the hospital, I would personally like to see them look at maximizing the size of that recharge basin as much as they can. I know my cursory look, you can at least get it to twice the size that it is now, if not more. I would like the engineer to come back and say, okay, this is what we can do, and this is what it'll cover. You know, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Gil, what was your calculation with them fixing that recharge basin? How much could it store?
I don't even
Is
have
that
it.
what you're trying to find out? Is that what we're trying to get to?
Well, that's what I would like to see VHB, Courtney review that, come up with I have a plan. It's just, and I can come up with a plan and they'll go, no, we want to do this. I would like to see them come back with a plan that says, this is how we maximize this site. The wetlands isn't a registered wetlands. It's a freshwater wetlands that was caused because nobody maintained it. I think the soils are going to be great based on the 2 soil borings that we have for the site. And that's one of my other comments was if we could get a couple more soil borings. But if it's any indication of what the overall site is like, I think you're going to have really good percolation. The increased size will be enough to handle most, if not all, large storms. We're entering into a whole new world with extreme weather and what it's bringing in. The more we can protect, the village, the road, the hospital, the land to the north, and especially the lands on the other side of North Country Road, which are lower, I think, it would be for the betterment of everybody. But I would like to see them come with a proposal to us.
So not having a lot of knowledge about recharge basin other than what I've been reading, when they increase the capacity, are they digging down or
They can.
digging
They
out?
absolutely can. The
Okay.
water level, the groundwater level on the 2, I'm doing this by memory, the 2 soil boring logs that they had, the water levels were significantly below grade. I want to say 70 or more feet.
Yep.
So they could go down as deep as they need to, within, again, you need to be able to get down to the bottom of the basin to be able to move equipment around to maintain it. So, there is some point where and after a while it becomes, you're not getting the benefit the deeper you go. What really you want is that expanded area. That's going to give you the biggest bang for your buck. So if you drive down 112, where they've done some improvements down your Horse Block Road to the north, there's a couple of big lots that are recharge basins. You'll see them. They're just like open square holes, but they've maximized the size of the basin to make it as efficient as it can. You've also got to take in, just one more thing, what you got to also look at is the grades. The grades in the parking lot are a little bit higher than the grades in the road. So when they come down and then they come across and back up, they can only get so deep without, with enough freeboard. You want a couple of feet before it starts to, overtop.
Right, because if it's too steep, then you're going to degrade that.
And that too, you really want to hold the 1-on-3, I think is what the requirements are.
So then as a person in the public, if Mather did expand that recharge basin, how much of that natural growth that we see now would they lose?
Again, you would lose probably a pretty good portion of it.
And I guess
certainly the stuff in the center, there is a basin now, there is a hole and it's filled with water and you can see it's standing water. Around there, again, that's something I would look for them to submit to us. If you go to Gerwin on Comac Road, Gerwin Medical Facilities, nursing homes, I believe, they did something where they tried to make it attractive, where it's not just a big box, and look, I think that's what we also want to see, something that's visually pleasing, although basin's a recharge basin. But,
I know, and I guess what I'm saying is I'd hate to create an eyesore.
And you can plant around it. You can do plantings. You can do plantings in it. You can make it, rather than square sided, you could make it, come in and out, or however you want to do it. I think the key is to get something back from the engineer that gives us the most capacity that we can get, cleans out the impervious soils, and allows the stormwater to go into it. My last suggestion was, and you know, I hope the village isn't cringing, is that there would be some agreement with the hospital that allows the village staff, by that I mean the highway department, to go in there and do some work 20, 30 years from now. You know, there's a storm and they they know a storm's coming and they haven't been able to get, you know, it hasn't been maintained, and now you got to get in there and you got to do some kind of immediate improvements. Allow the village to get in there and do those improvements that would at least allow some form of percolation, you know, in case of a storm that's coming.
It seems like the reluctance of going down has been driven by the fact that there's standing water in there, and there's, you know, it's like, well, there's a lot of water to pump out of there,
right,
to actually scarify the bottom or make it deeper. I mean, you know,
they wouldn't have to pump it. I really think that if they got in there with a big, you know,
a dredger
or an excavator, get in there with a large excavator with a large arm, punch some holes in, and let the water drain down. Once it gets to drain down, then, you know, and if you're lucky, you have a little bit of a dry period where it starts to dry out and they can start moving this stuff around and get it. Yeah, right. Yeah, well, that's always the case. This will be the year we get 50 feet of rain.
I don't even want.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Too late. So, I mean, that was basically my recommendations. So
did the R&M report define the amount of water coming from the village system that goes in there?
They talked about area, they talked about volume, and again, the volume is based on a certain inch of rainfall. So again, you could talk 9 inches, you could talk 5 inches, you know, you could, as Courtney stated, you could look at, you know, what the percolation rate is of the material that's under there to see, you know, and you could come up with a whole study, which would be cool, but from an engineering point of view. But I think the more you can maximize that site, the better they're going to get, you know, serve both themselves and the village.
And would it be our recommendation that even though they plan on doing a lot of this work later in the construction phases, that we have it all delineated now?
I think as long, yeah, if they could, I think that the key, in my opinion, would be to make sure that it's in the agreement between the village and the hospital, and that there is some timeline, and, you know, they're going to want a CO at some point. So, you know, if they haven't done anything, they're going to come back to the village and where's our CO? And the village is going to go, you know what, you got to do this. So there should be some way of tracking it so that it just doesn't get dropped.
Yeah.
Like everything we hear.
So if you wouldn't mind me jumping in, the conversations we've been having have been that, yes, it would have to be very well laid out in the reso, very well laid out in the EAF, and in any conditions of approval, outlining a timeline for completion. Part of the problem with being unable to really define that at this exact moment is we just got our engineers on board to start looking at this, and there's going to be some more work to do on that. And because it is going to be such a big lift, particularly because we now have to make two entities work together on figuring it out, that while there was a comfort level of moving forward from here with very specific timelines and dates, so that way we could take this large chunk and kind of take it a little offline, so that way we can get all the engineers around the table, all the minds, both the village board of trustees as well as Mather Hospital, to come up with a plan. Not only a plan of how we can best mitigate the water, but also not more importantly, but equally of importance, the forward-looking plan, the maintenance plan, the responsibilities plan, the liabilities plan, laying out all of those things, because both entities have similar but sometimes competing issues with that we all have to hammer out, and it is going to be complicated. And it's not something that we can get through in, say, the next 2 or 3 months. It's going to take a lot of work.
Could I ask, though, within all of that language, that there is an expected amount
end product?
There's an expected amount of storage. I want a number. I want it to be quantifiable. We need,
I think
they need, or there will be
they are required
cubic.
to provide capacity for a 3-inch rainfall, which
Okay.
currently they can't do.
Okay.
I think the applicants also offered to bond this. So there will be, you know, a bond in place as well as conditioning the CO later. I did talk to Courtney today, and she's eager to have a meeting between VHB, the village engineer, and I was hoping that perhaps Gil might be available for that meeting too, the week of the 21st. So I'm going to reach out and for, you know, the various parties' availability for a meeting like that, because right now there is no consensus on input right now into the or capacity of the recharge basin.
Okay. Yeah,
One
and that's-
consultant says, you know,
Yeah.
100,000 cubic feet. Another says 137,000. And ultimately numbers will matter.
Right.
I don't think we can hold. I bring up the 5-inch rainfall, just I'd like the planning board to start really thinking about this as a definite recommendation. We don't have 3-inch legislated anywhere either, but that is what we've required. But
But you do
I think
have,
it's,
you do have design standards. Which,
yes, you must contain, and
Right.
you must contain your rainfall.
right.
So,
Okay.
And I can tell you that I have started speaking with the mayor and some of the other members of the board, talking about, particularly as we're seeing more larger and larger rain events, that we're going to have to take a bit more of aggressive stance on how we're handling our runoffs. Not just from the big project perspective. We're even talking small scale, because every small thing will help. Talking about, you know, you go to get a road opening permit for your driveway. Well, you're now required to
French
drain
drain.
your driveway. Those are things that we don't currently have in the code, and that's going to be uncomfortable for a lot of property owners, because it's expensive enough redoing your driveway. But when you start requiring things as terribly sexy as drainage to the mix, where they could say, well, that's $5,000 that was going to go to, you know, landscaping my front yard. That's going to be a pinch there. I can say that the village has also started working with more than one engineering firm to work on a number of plans and grant opportunities to be trying to figure out how we're going to be upgrading our stormwater collection systems, how we're going to try to trap more water uphill, because as we've talked about earlier today, groundwater, depths of groundwater is a significant problem for much of downtown. Well, all of downtown. So we are looking at those steps as well, but I can tell you that I've had very positive conversations thus far with the administration regarding the future and upping that inch storm event. So.
And my hope also, and part of that discussion, especially on larger projects like this that have land, because it was very appropriately brought up in the public hearing, that it's all well and good to capture, you know, stormwater in these under, you know, subsurface cisterns, but that water hasn't gone through any filtration system through the plants. It's still carrying all of the pollutants it came with. Some of those, yes, will be removed, but the more low impact development that bioretention, there's a whole, and Suffolk County has been pretty good about encouraging these, and maybe it takes more now than encouragement when practicable that these measures be put into place too. And I know we have spots where there are rain gardens, but I think this needs to be, you know, on everyone's radar at all times when there is site available for them.
I think one of the things to keep in mind though, and, you know, and I agree, I think the natural treatment of stormwater is, you know, really something that should be looked at. Something as simple as a leaching pool that collects the stormwater the store, 95% of the pollutants, the heavy metals and whatnot, will attach to, you know, the sediments and whatnot. So, you know, the other things, the bio treatment is that uptake of everything else
Mhm.
that can be removed before it goes into the ground or into a surface water. So,
Right.
and let me know when the meeting is. I'll do my best to get there. So.
Oh, good. Good.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Gil, for that.
Yeah.
For looking into all of this.
My
It's so
pleasure.
detailed.
It's sad to say, but it was fun.
One engineer to another. I get it.
There you go. Who needs those architects?
Go nerds.
Not as much fun as traffic.
True.
It's true.
You guys can make up a lot more.
All right,
All
Laura,
right,
you have to.
On
You have
that
to take
note,
off.
I think this is a good time for me to
Yeah.
exit. But I can either watch this or I'll touch base with someone to try and figure out what else. Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks, Laura.
Thanks,
Good
Laura.
travel safe.
Safe travels. Yeah.
Much. Appreciate it.
And then there were 3.
All right. I think
All
the
right.
next bullet item I had in the staff report
Mhm.
was returning to noise, which I don't think has been adequately addressed in the expanded environmental assessment. And that's simply because there's not enough information for anything to be independently corroborated. And Allison and I were discussing this today, that as yet another condition, you know, we don't know a lot of things yet. And
Well, I
And-
think that the situation with the HVAC unit on the new building is it's, again, because the roadway is right there, it's kind of channeling down towards the houses on Belterre Road. So yes, I would like to see somebody monitor that. One of my neighbors that faces that did say that he's a little bit worried about noise, but I think he was more worried about ambulances going down there. But, you know, having the experience with the medical arts building, I think that could be a potential problem for him too.
well, I do think it's a good thing that the applicant has pledged to address the medical arts building as part of this application as well.
Yes.
But once the equipment is installed and you know how it behaves in its specific environment, to have an acoustical engineer consultant take readings and confirm or not confirm that the
Mhm.
mitigation is successful, and tie that to something like the CO ultimately,
Yes, yes.
so that it's not a problem that
Say
goes
either
on.
CO or bond release.
Or yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And that,
Also,
yeah,
at this
so that would
time,
be
I
for you to
kinda-
discuss.
You know, even though we had talked about there's a lot of the lights in that parking lot are dark sky compliant. I was looking at the rendering of the building, and there's a lot of glass there, you know, floor to ceiling glass, and that building is a 24/7 operation. You know, is there going to be a lot of light spillage from the building itself?
Hmm.
You know, because we're looking at the parking lot, but I'm thinking, wow, you know, there's going to be a lot of light coming from that building. Any
There's
thought?
a pretty
you know?
hefty buffer, right? Isn't there, Jenny, a pretty hefty tree
There
buffer
is.
from the direction it's facing?
They're proposing additional, I think fairly, I'm trying to remember how tall, 6 to 7 foot tall, I think, at planting evergreen screening.
Yes, but I'm looking at when people enter the property from Belterre Road, they're going on a straight line,
Mhm.
and they end up with that little curb cut right at the building, and it's a low curb cut. And I'm thinking, you know, I'd like to get a better idea of where the building sits. You know, even though I think I know where the building sits, and that corner, the northwest corner. It seems to be glass from the rendering I was looking at. I'm thinking of that, and I don't believe there's any tall trees at that point. But I know that they do create a light that when you're in the from the outside of a building, it doesn't look like the interior is lit, but once you get into the building, it has plenty of light. Do you know what I'm talking about?
And
Mhm.
like a window treatment?
Not a window treatment, but the old HSBC in Port Jeff Station had it, where they came in with this lighting that was supposed to be very, oh, I don't know the term, to save money. Loco went in and said, if you use this lighting, you will save money. You won't have a lot of ambient light. And I noticed that from the outside of the building, it didn't look like the lights were on, but once you went in, the light was perfect. And I thought maybe they could look at something like that. Or you're right, tint the windows, but I'll have to look at the plans again. I don't think there are tall trees where the building sits.
Right. And maybe I'll request, just send copies of the renderings that the architect had at the public hearing too.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Yeah. I don't know about you guys, but it reminded me of an airport terminal, so. But
What the entrance to an ER is, isn't it?
yeah,
Yeah.
the Architectural Review Committee liked it, so who am I to say? So there you go.
I've wondered, and I have not yet asked the applicant. The property has 2 lots. I'm not sure why they can't be merged into one lot. They're
Jen, I spoke with Mr.
interdependent.
Bordino.
Oh, you did?
Sorry to interrupt that. I spoke to Mr. Bordino very early in this process and let him know that the planning board would likely be conditioning the approval on the merging of those lots.
Oh, terrific. Great. Yeah, it's an odd thing that's persisted. It's too bad Laura's no longer here, because I think she is the person that raised the question about the height of a potential garage and the flight path that has been proposed, interfering with the height that might be required. And I do think that that's surmountable. I think the parking garage could either be moved. I think there's plenty of especially if you move it toward the building. And there's no reason why you can't have underground parking. We're uptown. There's no water table to worry about. It's just
True.
so. I think a couple of meetings ago, when we were discussing the learning center, that's in the southeast corner. It used to be the ambulance garage.
Yeah.
That's been converted. That used to be an ambulance garage. It's now a learning center. That was done without planning board approval. We asked for plans, and at the time, I think the applicant wondered, would the planning board require elevations as well? That's a decision you can make.
And I thought we had, Jenny, I thought we had discussed that in the subsequent meeting and said that at this late part of the meeting of the process that we would put that in as very clear conditions and language in the reso, that any alterations to that building were not considered and blessed as part of this site plan, and that would have to be addressed in the future. I'm pretty sure we had talked about that maybe one meeting after it was brought up. That because it had been brought up and kind of caught kind of later in the process, but that we wanted to make sure it was very clear in the reso that while we are considering this a overall site plan, that we didn't backdoor give a blessing to something that was never given any consideration. And I think the reasoning for that was that it really does in many ways act independently, because it's put off in that corner by the what was it called? The drainage area.
Right.
And that they would still have to come in and pull all that together and legalize the things that are happening over there.
Is there a time frame? Did we discuss like when that would happen? Or
we can make a time frame for that. That's within the planning board's purview.
All right. No, I have no problem with
But
that.
we just wanted to make sure that the reso is very, very clear that since that came up kind of late in the process, that was not, we didn't want to backdoor approval on that because it really hadn't been considered, because it was, and the applicant admits, was converted prior to any planning board approval or blessing.
Right.
So I think the agreement was that we would beef up the reso outlining that specifically that wasn't approved, and then we can put in our conditions a timeline for bringing that up to snuff. And then that when we do bring that up to snuff, though, it will be added to this overall site plan that we're going through now. Because moving forward, instead of doing these little piecemeal, like, well, I know it's a big site, but we're only looking at this one corner, so I'm only going to provide this one corner.
Right.
We're not going to do that anymore. Like,
Right.
when you come in, sorry, too bad, so sad, big old site plan every time. That way we're always working off one master sheet. So we don't have to try to rebuild what we just.
So
like what
perhaps at
happened the
that
last
later
50 years.
date, we can address the lack of drainage, sort of parking
It'll be
and curb cuts, and that can all be part of something that happens in the future and added to the master plan.
and added to the master overall plan. Yes, but so instead of just like doing like, oh, we'll just do an elevation of this now, I think it makes a lot more sense to go holistically on that site. It's not as interdependent as the other buildings on the site. It does kind of operate in its own little land, but we'll just beef up the reso to make sure that's all outlined and put some timelines on it.
Okay. Is that okay with the board? Board's okay with that too? Good. Okay. There was just a housekeeping things, a change in a note. The hospital, while it is tied to the sewer district, does not fall within the boundaries, and they have some agreement with the sewer district.
It's not a district connection. Yeah, it's pretty common.
Right. The note just specifically says it's within I don't know. I'm just dotting I's, crossing T's. I
absolutely.
I don't know. Just so no one's confused in the future. Courtney at one point showed us this lovely little gated enclosure for storing things, and the one that we saw has a roof. The one that's spec'd does not. Not sure, how that affects what's stored in there or what's actually being proposed. I did feel that, and in the Billhorn entrance, the North Country Road entrance that's now getting signalized, parking is being removed along that curved entrance exit, and a sidewalk provided. I thought that was a nice opportunity perhaps to provide some additional, rather than just seeding it with grass, put in some trees that, pedestrians can, deciduous trees that provide shade. It's just it just makes the entrance to the hospital a little more attractive and shield some of the parking for the people who are walking. And one of the public comments that I think this board has sort of touched on briefly was as a nonprofit, the hospital does not pay taxes to the village, but it does there is a substantial community benefit and impact, perhaps not as beneficial impact, and that the board discuss a payment in lieu of taxes.
Mm-hmm. They're also part of the business improvement district, and because the fee to the business improvement district is based on taxes, which they don't pay, even though they're in the district, they don't contribute to that either.
So I've also spoken to the mayor about that, to put this on the radar of the trustees moving forward. And basically it's, while the village certainly recognizes the enormous economic generation benefit of the hospital, never mind the benefit of having not one, but two excellent hospital facilities right in our very own backyard, that there are also impacts that then fall to the residency, mainly being roads, and the impact that traffic has on those. It is something that she wants to sit down with the Board of Trustees and discuss in the future, because it's certainly by no means a Mather only consideration. That we also have, again, like I mentioned, another hospital. We also have a ferry that puts hundreds and hundreds of cars onto our roads every single day. sometimes in the busy season, thousands, having significant impacts. So it is something that I also put on the radar of the village attorney for talking about in the future, for coming up with, what exactly are the options that the village has to try to mitigate these financial impacts, and how a village would put together a process by which to make sure that they were any sort of pilot would be fairly attributed but towards all those who may be having those impacts on our infrastructure, but because of how they are incorporated, do not pay into the kitty for taking care of that. So that is certainly something that I had a conversation with the mayor about last week, and touched base with the village attorney on at the same time. So that is something that's just.
Okay.
That's all I got.
All right. I think I talked earlier about how the preponderance of comments we got about clearing.
Oh, I
and-
do have something about that. Yeah.
And the walkway or the walking path, I guess it is, around the parking lot that's used by probably more non-employees of the hospital than employees, but I'm sure some employees walk around the parking lot too for exercise. And I think, Jen, maybe I mentioned the PJ Oakland on the south side.
Mhm.
You had suggested, I think, the walking path that they eventually put in, an asphalt path, I guess it runs around, I forget, maybe 2/3 of the property behind the buildings. It starts at the southwest corner. I think it runs around to
Yeah,
the
I
east
think a
side.
former planner here used to actually walk that, right, Cindy, Neil? I think so.
Oh, did he? Okay.
I think so.
Good. Well, that's put to good use. So, maybe we look for something like that. I mean, that's, that would certainly be good. And then we need to talk about the clearing limit too. We're
Mhm.
okay to go up to 75%, right? But that's a planning board
Right,
decision.
determination, right.
And then the vegetation, how much vegetation? And you mentioned, I think you have some
I do
aerial
have,
photos
yeah.
and things of that nature. So I'd like to hear that.
I sent the aerial photos, I thought they were interesting.
Yeah.
But I did speak to Courtney today. During the public hearing, there is a suggestion to, in order to decrease the amount of proposed clearing, that the two stepped retaining walls that separate the upper and lower lots, that be made into one tall wall, and then use that, the space that you gain to provide extra parking. And they did take a serious look at that. It produces an 18-foot retaining wall that's got to retain a lot. Land, cars parked on top of the land. It's quite an engineering project. And it does not, I think you gain about a half an acre less clearing. And we were sort of discussing, is it really worth the benefit? 18-foot wall across that entire lot is significant.
Mhm.
The proposal currently has two stepped 5-foot retaining walls with slopes behind them. They're planted with meadow grasses. So that is planned to perhaps become natural. And I think in many ways is aesthetically and in terms of, not having to provide a tremendous number of safety features to prevent cars and people falling off an 18-foot wall, that the reclaiming or the half acre that you might preserve, additional half acre that you might preserve, may not really be worthwhile in the end. But I thought I would run that by you. That's sort of the consensus that they came to. I'm inclined to agree.
Would the grading be such that you could create some kind of stormwater treatment, at least for the upper parking lots? I mean, I know a lot of it's going into the leaching system up at the north end, but slope wise, if the parking lot comes down and then hits that slope, is there some kind of stepped treatment that might be able to be constructed that could facilitate a certain rainfall or, you know, again, I'm not sure how it's graded, if it all goes towards the north, south or what, but I'll have to take a look at the plans, but it might be something to think about.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Okay. More, yeah. I guess we'll have to look at that more.
Yeah. I'll take a look at it too.
Okay. Any more questions, comments to pass along to the applicant?
I had a point of clarification if I could ask.
Yeah.
Just, I want to make sure that I heard correctly that in their presentation, they're planning for 13% extra parking, I would say.
Oh, I don't think it was 13% at all. They want to have a vacancy rate of 87%. That's maybe where you're, which is, so right now they don't, I mean, not a vacancy rate, a vacancy rate of 13%.
Right. So,
So 87% full. So that doesn't mean that they're providing 13% more than the required parking spaces. So the numbers are, you can't really compare the two. Does that make sense? They're not providing 13% more parking than they need, but the parking they're providing based on what they see occupied will result in an occupancy that's lower than what they currently have. Right now, they have they are pretty maxed out.
and I thought I heard too that they are providing more parking than.
They are providing slightly more, but just not 13% more. I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but it's not a huge number more than they're required to provide.
Okay, I'd be curious. I got that question from a resident. So
Oh, sure. Yeah, no, I'll get you the answer to that.
Providing, like 13% more parking is good practice. Parking spaces is good practice, because if you're right at 100% or 99%, and picture you enter the lot, you got to find that one space somewhere in that lot. You're going to be up and down for 20 minutes.
The engineer
to find one space.
The presenter said that 5 to 7% was the sort of the standard to have extra. So it just struck me as I didn't understand. I didn't have an answer to that as far as the planning for 13%, but 5 to 7% being industry standard.
Yeah, and
I think part of it is, Rebecca, that the hospital has, my understanding is the hospital has not fully brought all staff back in. So they have been doing these counts throughout. They did counts prior to COVID. They did counts through COVID, and I believe they're continuing. If I understood correctly, they continue to do so. So part of why they may have more at the 13%, because again, it's not an exact science. It's a little more art. Is that they don't have everyone fully in, and it also gives some room if they need to make if they're looking to make other adjustments to the hospital in the future, where they need, say, their education program gets bigger and they're going to need some more parking there. I mean, there's things that can happen at the hospital that have absolutely nothing to do with the building itself that can intensify it, and those spaces would be necessary. That was my understanding from at least the conversations we've been having with the applicant over.
Yeah, and I think that statement was made during the public meeting, because I wrote it down somewhere, that they were talking about the number of interns they're going to bring in for training, and how the emergency room is going to be occupied by a lot of people. And I was like, I hope this is consistent with the parking that you figured out, because that could be a lot of additional parking spaces taken up. But I did make note of that. I don't know if there's anything else that we wanted to talk about. I mean, there was a lot of comments from residents to the north about expansion of the parking lot, but I thought the parking lot was actually pretty much on the north end was pretty much where it is right now. I didn't
It
think there was,
is.
in fact.
They're
they-
not
they
expanding,
re-
they're expanding to the
To the
east.
east. Yeah.
Right, and I think they removed actually a row of parking. on that side.
They did. That's where the road will go now.
Right.
Yeah, so,
I think that those comments were about the wildlife that wouldn't have a place to live anymore and continue to spill out into their
Oh,
yards. I remember that.
in
the one-
general, okay.
Yeah, the one
Well,
was-
they're all in my backyard now anyway.
All right, so we have Gil Anderson's Nature Sanctuary.
Yes,
Uh,
yeah. Wild Kingdom,
all
That's
right, then-
because you
then
feed
burn it all
them.
down. That's fine.
my little bunny friends and whatever.
Oh,
And,
bunnies.
okay, I think we touched enough on parking. Yeah, that 18-foot high retaining wall is gonna be a very expensive structure. And even a parking garage, if you go down, you've got those foundation walls that
Oh, yeah.
are, pretty substantial too.
Yep.
And of course, the cost of the parking garage, up to $30,000 a space for a parking space that's on a structure. That's a tremendous number. And that number's probably up with materials costs now. It seems obscene that it costs that much, but it does. Okay, are we kind of at the end of discussion on Mather?
I think so.
Okay, good. Before we adjourn, I just want to, say thanks to Allison for all the help.
We'll
At
miss you.
all the meetings,
We
And-
will miss you.
keeping us on course. In terms of,
Sorry,
Like-
I'm here. I stepped away from the computer, but had the headphones in. Thank you.
okay, in terms of keeping us on course legally and in accordance with SECRA, it's been, I'm really gonna miss you personally because, you're kind of like the anchor that when we start drifting away, or in particular, if I start saying something that's not the right thing to say, you step in and put me back on course. So we're gonna miss that.
Well, we're gonna have you in good hands. I'm getting Rich up to speed, and he's got experience with this too. But on a personal note, I'm gonna miss every single one of you.
Yeah,
And hey, I still live here. You're still gonna be stuck with me.
that's true. All right, well, thanks. And can I guess, can I get a motion to adjourn? There's only three of us.
Oh, wait, I just saw the numbers for Rebecca. I think they're providing 37 extra parking spaces.
Okay,
So
thank you. I'll pass along that. information.
1,291 are required. They're providing 1,328. So
Okay, very good. And then I had one more point of clarification, just the 18-foot retaining wall, that would be sort of where the parking garage would be coming out anyway, if there was a next phase?
the
Depends how you
18-foot
design
retaining
it.
wall gets rid of right now there's a slope proposed between the
I
upper. Oh, okay.
Sorry, not to interrupt, but I understand that, but sort of if they're, if they enter phase 4, the parking garage would be
Yep.
so that wall would be necessary anyway.
Well, yes,
Depends.
if that's where it depends on where they locate it. If it's just one level on the lower level, I mean, I it's hard to say.
I think as Ray said, if you go up, you've got quite a structure to build, and if you go down, you've got quite a structure to build. So structurally, it's expensive, no matter which way you go. So, if you put it at the edge of the north lot going up, you've got to support everything to move up. And if you go down, there's all the soil on the other side. So there's a lot of considerations. It's not just an easy, whoops, we do this. So
No, of course, I was just, kind of, I'm
Anticipating what
always
the-
thinking 20, 50 years ahead when,
Yeah.
if phase 4 came, it would sort of, that would.
Maybe they put in a parking garage that's self-parking and that's in an entirely different location. and-
Stations don't need parking and, there you go.
I mean, if you look at the old, the pictures that you sent, you look how different things were 50 years ago, even, in 1962, and there was the farms and it was,
Yeah.
I'm sure, and all the woods were on the southwest corner of the property where the
Right.
buildings are now. So they
Yeah.
migrated, and now it's a question of whether or not they're going to completely migrate off the property.
Yeah.
Okay, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Looks
I'll
up to you. Second. All in favor? Aye.
Bye. Thank you,
Good night,
everybody.
everybody.
Good luck, Allison. Congratulations.
Yay, Allison.
Yeah.